Hi, so this is my first video, and also that's why I wanted to make an introduction video. So this YouTube channel should be a booktube and a studytube channel, because that's basically what I've been watching at YouTube for the last 1.5 years. And that's also the time since I'm studying at university. So maybe I'll just start by introducing myself. I'm Adele or Adele. I'm from Germany, that's why the different pronunciation. I don't mind if anybody in real life calls me Adele if they can't pronounce the German version. I'm a German university student, and I'm in my undergraduate majoring Japanese studies. And next to that, in my minor, maybe you would say, I do cross-media journalism. So what you might see in my StudyTube content is, next to studying Japanese and studying Japanese culture and society, I'll also do like radio entries and stuff. So I'm working like an internship kind of thing. I'm working for a local radio that's basically trying to teach us how to do radio entries and how to write scripts, how to speak. That's another thing I wanted to talk about. So because I'm German and I'm studying Japanese, this channel might become or multilingual. So there might be videos in Japanese, there might be videos in German, and there will be, definitely will be videos in English. Maybe I thought of doing the Booktube Newbie tag for you to get to know me on that matter. Why did you start this channel? So I don't even know if I talked about that already. So I basically watched Booktube and StudyTube for about 1.5 years now. I started an Instagram Bookstagram account for Japanese literature, and I really want to just share what I think about books, and I want to talk about books, and I want to build a community. And that's why I really wanted to start this Booktube channel, but also in combination with the StudyTube. And I'm also going for an exchange year, hopefully, if everything with Corona goes all right. I'm going to Japan in autumn, and I want to share my experiences because I went to Japan in 2018 after my A-levels for 4 months to do a work and travel, and I had like a few problems. I couldn't really do research on, I couldn't find anything on the internet that would help me. I also want to share my experiences with books and my feelings about books maybe, and I want to know how other people are feeling about it. I think it's important to discuss about a couple of books and topics, but I hope we can all be like still pretty chilled in this community. What are some unique things you can bring to Booktube? So my favorite genre is not really a genre, it's like translated fiction, it's translated Japanese literature. And I think that's a pretty niche thing. So I see really few booktubers talking about Japanese literature. That doesn't mean I will only talk about Japanese literature, because I also read like other stuff. And also I think for example, there aren't many fantasy translated from Japanese literature, and if I feel like reading a fantasy, I'll probably read a fantasy that isn't Japanese literature. And there's also a lot of other books and series I'm interested in that are in Japanese literature. What are you most excited about for this new channel? So I'm really excited of building a community, of interacting with people. Also because at the moment I'm only in online university, and like communicating is pretty hard these days, and I really want to reach out to different people, and I don't have many people to talk about the same books with. So that's why I really wanted to build a community I can share the same interests with, and I can talk to you. That's what I hope to do, and maybe I motivate somebody to read the same books or to study. I often watch study videos before studying. Sometimes I also procrastinate and watch somebody else study instead of studying. Happens. But I call it self-care. So the fourth question is, what do you love about reading? So my favorite thing about reading might be, as for most people, the escapism part, but I mostly read crime and mystery these days, and I think just like escaping into a world that mostly is still real, but you have to, like, you try to figure out who did it or what has happened and how somebody did something. And I really like escaping in that part because I still need to like use my brain power. I sometimes just like lay the book, like put the book away and be like, how did this happen? Because I take him before I take the book again and read how everything happened. So I also really like the Tokyo Zodiac Murders in that aspect by Soji Shimada, and I think he really tells the reader to try to solve the case themselves. He gives you everything you need, and I think that's interesting. So before the last chapter starts, he writes a letter to the reader and tells you, put the book away, think about, do you know who it is? I gave you all the hints. And I love that. I just recently read the book like last week, I think, and I really liked that aspect of the book. What book or series got you into reading? So I have like 3 phases in my life where I was reading. The first one was when I was like still a child, when I was in elementary school, maybe so like 2nd to 6th grade. Okay, so the first series that got me into reading was the Ulysses Moore series. Obviously, it's a German version, and I really liked it back then. It's kind of real life fantasy. So we have the aspects of them of escaping to different times. So I think in the second book the 3 kids are escaping through the door to Egypt, but Egypt in the time of Tutankhamun when he was still a pharaoh. So it's pretty early and it's really interesting. And in another book they escape to the 1600s in Venice in Italy, and it's really packing, and I love the characters. So I only read when I was a child the first season. I didn't know there was a second season back then. And also these books exist in English. So if you're interested in middle grade, I would really highly recommend these books. So on to my second reading phase. So while high school or like middle high school life, I mostly read mostly read manga, but there was a few book series I really liked. And my favorite book series that got me back into reading for a while in high school and middle school was read these books. These books are basically about Vikings, and these Vikings kidnapped a bard and basically got him to show them the way. And he's still like a bard in education, so he's still learning how to do everything. And basically we're following him growing up kind of in this situation and going through different adventures. And I really like it. I'm also like a person for mythology, if it's Greek mythology, if it's North mythology, if it's Japanese mythology. I just really like retellings as well. I seldomly read retellings, but I really like them. My third phase of reading started in 2020, and my first book was really bad, and I don't want to talk about it. It didn't get me back into reading. I think the first book after that really bad book that I picked up was The Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. And I really liked it for the aspect that it was telling the aspects of somebody who's thinking differently. And I think also in aspects of looking at Japanese society, I really like it because it shows the need to be the same, to fit in. And I think about that very often, as I think we also learn about that in Japanese study, obviously, that you need to fit in somehow, to not be discriminated, to have chances at work, and so on and so forth. And that's why I really like this book. It's a German version again. Yeah, but I really need to say I like the German design so much. Yes, and the second book I read pretty much after this one was my first Japanese mystery murder mystery. And it's The Aosawa Murders by Riku Onda. It's really interesting because mostly you already know who the murderer is, and the main character of the book really wants, like, she's telling you that this person is the murderer. And I think the bag tells you something different. At least I had expected something different from it, but I still liked it. And though we have kind of a main character and we have a main suspect, we still have the book told from different perspectives. But all the different perspectives were people that had to do with the case, or especially had to do with the main character, who is the person who suspects our main suspect. So I highly recommend this book. What questions would you like to ask your favorite booktubers? So my favorite booktuber, I would say, is Kate File. I'm following her since I started watching Booktube like 1.5 years back. I got into Japanese literature because of her and my major, obviously. And I would probably try to want to talk with her about Battle Royale, because it was my favorite book from 2020. And I think it was also one of her favorite books a few years back. And I think the construction of the book is really interesting. And I also think that the construction of Japan as a dictatorship in the book is really interesting. I would want to talk about that with her maybe. What challenges do you think starting a booktube channel will be the hardest to overcome? So I'm already bad at posting regularly at my Bookstagram Instagram channel. So this might be also something hard for me to do here. Also, I'm not used to sitting in front of a camera. I'm also not really like happy with the camera angle at the moment, but I just really wanted to start filming. Also, I really want to work at my expressions because I always start squinting, and I'm just usually doing that. I seem to be always squinting onto the AIDS questionnaire. So I think I told you about that already in the question about what books got me into reading. So when I really started to love reading was actually in 2nd grade. So it was like 8-9 years old. Question number 9, where do you read? So I usually read in my reading corner or in my bed. Okay, 10th question, what kind of books do you like to read? I talked about that in the other questions beforehand as well. I currently love to read mystery, detective fiction, crime, everything in that kind of direction. I also love contemporary for sometimes, and I also sometimes still read fantasy, but the books I read the most, books that are kind of guilty pleasure for me, books that calm me down, books that are easy to read for me, and that mostly always catch my interest, are always mystery, crime, detective fiction books. What does your book collection look like? So I'm currently at my flat in Leipzig, the city where I'm studying at, but I have a pretty big manga collection from my high school years, but they are nearly all in Halle at my parents' house. So I will show them to you eventually in a later video, and I will only show you my books that I have here in this flat. So at the topmost shelf we have like some detective fiction, some mystery, also some classics and some contemporary, so it's just completely mixed up. At the shelf beneath we have my collection of my guilty pleasure collection kind of. We have my collection of Sherlock Holmes on the right side, and we have my collection of the 3 Investigators, which basically is a child series of mystery. Beneath we have my collection of books illustrated by Benjamin Lacombe. Beneath that we have my collection of Japanese literature, which is like kind of mixed up with all kind of genre. Okay, so on my second bookshelf we had the topmost, we have yaoi manga and 2 other books on gay romance. Beneath that we have my Detective Conan collection. Beneath that my Blake Butler collection. That's every book that's out so far, every manga in Germany. And beneath that we have my mostly fantasy, and beneath that we have 3 classics, I guess. One of them is Chinese, and I'm not sure if it's a classic, but the other 2 are classics.